Oh my gosh, we're doing this. It's the first ever episode of Splash Hit Territory, or we're just going to call it Splash Hit. My first time doing a podcast, Susan's first time doing a podcast. We are so excited. This is going to be the greatest podcast ever. It's all Giants all the time. So, 30 plus years covering baseball, our regular guest, San Francisco beat writer, and she'll be joining us as her schedule allows. And more importantly, my friend, Susan Slusser. Susan, we're doing this. Super excited to talk some Giants baseball with you on a regular basis.
Right back at you, FP. Who are you again? Remind me. Do you have any credentials at
I
all?
mean, I didn't think I needed an introduction, but FP Santangelo, former San Francisco Giant, current Giant broadcaster. So we're there every day. We talk Giants baseball together every day. We sit next to each other during the games, and all of a sudden we're like, we should do a podcast. Here it goes. And how are you doing, first of all, and where are you doing the podcast from?
Well, I'm in jolly old England, where I like to spend the first sort of month or so in the off season, and where you will be joining me. We can do this together, FP. I said from the pub. Maybe it'll be a little too loud, but the pub is a possibility at some point this month.
I know I'm coming to join you at the end of the month for a week in England.
Oh,
Those will
now I can
not
see
be
you.
those will probably not be sober podcasts, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so we got to hit the big topic. We got to start right from the get-go about Tony Vitello. By the way, subscribe to Splash Hit Territory on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We are part of the Foul Territory Network. Got to get that out of the way. So Splash Hit, great name. We came up with this together, but great topics to talk about in our very first podcast. Tony Vitello, the new manager, Tony Vitello, the new manager of the San Francisco Giants. That's how it's pronounced, Vitello. Your thoughts, Susan? You go first.
Well, I have to say I was skeptical. When I first heard his name floating out there, Andy Baggerly of The Athletic was on this right away, and maybe a little bit just of almost some guesswork, some smart guesswork. Maybe right when Bob Melvin was let go at the press conference, Andy Baggerly said, "Would you consider a college coach to Buster?" And I think a lot of us kind of looked around like, "What? What are you talking about?" It just hasn't been done before. A manager from the college ranks who has never played pro ball, never coached in pro ball. Yeah, I mean, FP, you played forever. This is really unprecedented. So you think, like, how are veteran players going to respond to a guy who has no pro experience? But Tony Vitello seems like he's won over everyone. I have yet to talk to him, so it's very weird. As you know, I wrote a very extensive profile of him without ever talking to him, but I talked to his dad, I talked to a bunch of his friends, I talked to his college coach, and Jace Tingler, obviously, who's a possibility for the Giants staff. And I realized it's the first time I've ever written a feature about anybody who I haven't actually met or talked to unless it was an obituary. So I hope that's not some sort of foreshadowing of the Giant season. But you were at the press conference. So really, I want to ask you what your thoughts were, because I watched it. But it's different watching it on your laptop versus you were there.
Well, I'll start with this. The Giants are having way too many press conferences lately. So, I mean, between hiring Bob Melvin and Buster Posey and now Tony Vitello. So I think why I said that is they hired Tony for some stability in the organization, 47 years old. And when you talk about the vibe, just the vibe at the press conference, like everybody that worked at the ballpark was there. So we had all the media characters that we all know and see every day. They were there and the cameras were everywhere. But like all the employees that were at the ballpark were there. And when Tony walked in, they were all clapping. So this wasn't on air. So everybody's clapping when he came in. And I was sitting with Mark Willard, and we were both talking about how just the energy in the room before he even started talking, the energy in the room was incredible. And then he got up there and just absolutely killed it. He's so dynamic. You can see the passion that he has for life, first of all, but the passion that he has for winning in the game. I think that's going to come through and be huge. I know there are a lot of questions, right? A college coach that's never run a major league spring training before. Like, how does he do that? How does he relate to the older players? But I think it comes down to like winners win. And it doesn't matter where you're at. There's going to be an adjustment period. There's going to be a learning curve. And we're going to get to who his coaching staff should be or could be here coming up. And I think that's going to be super important. But, we have a mutual friend in Sean Kelly. Sean Kelly is a relief pitcher with the Nationals when I was broadcasting back east. And Sean and I became really close. One of my favorites of all time. So I'm walking in the ballpark and I look and there's Sean. And I go, what are you doing here? Well, I'm best friends with Tony. So that evolved into Tony and I got to spend a little time together after the press conference in the Giants clubhouse. And we actually hung out later that evening. So in a short time, I've really gotten to experience Tony Vitello in the sense that I'm buying everything he's selling. Like, he seems authentic, he seems charismatic, and for a salty old player, and a lot of them are probably going, "Why are they hiring this guy?" I was all in. Like, I would
Yeah.
love to play for him, coach for him, like be at the ballpark, talk to him, do his show every day.
Oh, you
So,
have a man crush.
no, I'm in until, I mean, I think the Giants had to take a big swing to do something to catch the team that just won the World Series for the second straight year.
Yeah, shake it up. I like the shake it up element, which we are learning. That's what comes with Buster Posey, and I love that. He shocked everybody with adding Rafael Devers 6 weeks before the deadline. This one, huge swing. Who knows how much Nick Hundley suddenly withdrawing his name had to do with it. Obviously, they're close friends. He regarded Nick Hundley highly. Nick Hundley's still in the possibility in San Diego, obviously, depending on when this goes out. But I do like that. But there are questions, FP. He, 162 game season, how you manage a bullpen, very different from the college game, of course. How you deal with the Latin players. You have all these Spanish speaking players, which is not something that you find at the college level very often. There are a few, but he said these are things he's aware of, he knows, which is, I think, kind of how we go into the talking about the coaching staff, because that's going to be huge, right? There will be some, I think, some returning coaches. The Giants have said that they will bring some guys back. They'll recommend some guys. But the biggest thing, as you know, of course, is the bench coach. You probably want someone with managerial experience, somebody who works well with Tony Vitello. The obvious choice is probably Jace Tingler if he wants to do it. I know he lives in Kansas City. Maybe that's a tough sell. I don't know, but he's certainly the guy, seems to be the leader in the clubhouse if he has interest.
First of all, before we get to the coaching staff, I don't know if you remember, and I'm not taking credit for this. You had the article teed up for possible replacements for Bob Melvin.
Yeah.
If indeed that happened, you, as a reporter, as a writer, you have to be ready at all times for everything. So you were kind of prepared if something happened. And I don't know if you remember this, but I turned to you at the game and I said, "What about Tony Vitello?"
Yeah,
you
did.
And you said, "What? Are you nuts? Like, are you crazy? A college guy?" Okay. So I'm not taking credit, but for some reason, I have seen him a lot on Instagram. I've seen a lot on TikTok. I've heard a lot of his interviews, and what Drew Gilbert brought to the team as a former Tennessee Volunteer and the energy he brought, it just clicked. Like, why not hire his coach, won a national championship?
Yeah. And clearly they love that program. They take Gavin Kylan with their first pick. They've got Blade. They trade for both Drew and Blade Tidwell. They've got another kid at AA from Tennessee. I mean, this is a program that Giants obviously really like. 3-time college coach of the year, and this is a young guy. And the college coaching job is tough. Some might say it's tougher than okay, that's crazy. It's not tougher than being a big league manager, but you've got not only do you have all the recruiting, which that's going to be big for a San Francisco Giants manager. No joke. That's going to come in really handy. You get a 1-2 punch of a charmer like Tony Vitello, and then you get Buster Posey's heft. That's huge. I love that. I love that element of it. But you've got the portal now, the transfer portal, you got the NIL stuff. I don't think that job is as fun as it used to be. I think it used to be like, oh, you can go be a college coach. You can stay there forever. You can kind of live on a beautiful campus and have an assistant doing your recruiting for you. It is not that anymore. So it's a great, I know he was torn, but I think one of the things he's really going to bring is that recruiting ability. And I've talked to a lot of people, as you have, who all just sing his praises like crazy, starting with Phil Garner, who's one of the people I really respect the most that I've covered in this game. And Phil's a Tennessee alum and has gotten to know Tony, and he was like, this guy is the real deal. Phil Garner was a longtime major league player and a major league manager, and a really good one. So I really like that a lot. But you know what? They're dealing with the media has brought down some managers numerous managers, that I don't think that's going to be a problem for Tony Vitello at all. I think he's going to look. It looks so far like he's going to be a media darling.
No, he crushed the press conference. I thought he commanded the room, unlike any manager I've ever seen in an introductory press conference. And Greg Johnson's now in charge of the NIL money. So we'll see how that goes. But back to your point, because I'm ADD and you're not. The coaching staff, I think it's super important for obvious reasons. I mean, any Giants fan watching this probably knows this, but the coaching staff is super important because there's a dynamic between the manager and the bench coach that I don't think a lot of people know. The bench coach, for people that don't know, is kind of the manager's right-hand man. And the manager will say, like, get Susan loose. She's hitting third this inning. Or he's telling him maybe suggestions about who we should get up in the bullpen, or, different in-game decisions real time. And it moves so fast at the big league level. And I've seen instances where bench coaches are just yes men. Like, yeah, Skipper, great call. I do the same thing. And I think there's certain instances too where bench coaches have an agenda and they want to be a big league manager, and there could be some friction there because somebody wants the manager's job. So what you need is somebody you can trust, somebody that has major league experience, somebody that'll tell you, no, that's dumb. What are you thinking? Not loud enough for the players to hear it, but you need a guy that you can trust. And I think in Tony Vitello's case, he needs somebody that's been there and done that, because it's going to move fast. I talk about my minor league experience managing the San Jose Giants in front of 300 people in San Jose. And I was just, get the pitcher up. I got to pinch hit here. I got to put on a bunt sign. Where's the out? I mean, it was nuts at that level. So I think the key for Tony is to get into a routine and have a coaching staff that can slow it down for him. Because we sit up there in the booth and it goes slow for us. But when you're in that dugout, everything's going like this. So somebody with major league experience managing has to be the bench coach in my mind. And I've heard some names like David Ross, former manager of the Chicago Cubs, obviously Jace Tingler, who they're very close, which you need that. Maybe a Brandon Hyde, who's managed in the big leagues, but whoever's standing next to him has to be a little saltier than he has, with more major league experience, so he can bounce things off him.
Yeah, I really like Jace Tingler a lot. Obviously, they're close friends. I love David Ross. I've known David Ross since he was a minor league player. Very sharp, very calm. Just and obviously he's both played on the very big stage and winning a World Series with Boston, and managed the Cubs. That is an experience you gotta think, and left the Cubs under weird circumstances. Sort of like, yeah, we actually thought you were doing a great job, but we really wanted Craig Counsell. That's bizarre, and he's still out there. I would either of those guys would be great. Brandon Hyde, local guy. Also be, any of those are really good names. I love that. Who would you bring back from the existing staff?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Come on, these guys are all my friends. I'm a big Pat Burrell guy. I love the human being. I'm a huge fan of the human being. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, Susan, I have a lot of friends. We have a mutual friend, Eric Chavez, who just got let go as a hitting coach for the Mets. And he had some interesting things to say. And I've heard this not from Pat, but kind of through the grapevine, being around the team every day. Sometimes with hitting coaches, there can be too many voices, where this guy has a theory, this guy has a theory, this guy has a theory, and you're hearing it from three different guys. When I think if you really want success, you have to have supreme confidence in your guy, and maybe an assistant too, because it's such a tough job. Like, hitting coaches never get any of the credit; they get all the blame. It's the hardest job on the staff. It's never like, oh, the Giants are hitting 300 with the runners in scoring position. Way to go, Pat Burrell. It's like they're hitting 110. Our hitting coach sucks. So you never get any of the credit; you get all the blame. So I thought he did a great job. He connects with people greatly, but there may have been too many voices.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Yeah, people just don't really notice, and we see the work that these guys put in behind the scenes and how respected they are. First of all, I think the whole staff was very well respected last year, and I think that's one reason Buster and Zach Manassian have been saying, we're going to recommend these coaches to the next manager. They've said that throughout. But I'm with you with Pat, just a wonderful person. But I think people also don't realize it's not just that hitters are listening to the hitting coaches. A lot of them have their own hitting guys. They've got dads. They've got people weighing in now. It's crazy. There's almost too much noise sometimes. Plus, you get all the metrics thrown at you. There's a lot. You got to sift through things sometimes. And I do think one of the good things about Pat is that he played at the big league level and he knows how to kind of help each guy find the necessary things. And we're also, obviously new players came in last year who took a while to get going, especially Willie Adames. And when you have some big bats in the top of the order, middle of the order, that affects everybody in the order. And that kind of threw things off too. Now, was that going to be the best lineup in the division? Of course not, but they needed more. So I understand the criticisms. I don't think it was certainly all Pat. And I think with guys now acclimated to the team, to the organization, who know their roles, I think that things could be different. But for me, JP Martinez and Garvin Alston need to come back. The pitching was more than solid. And Andy Baggerly asked Tony Vitello during the press conference, how are you going to deal with the Latin players? You haven't really had any. You don't speak Spanish. And he's like, yeah, I need Spanish speakers on the staff. JP Martinez speaks Spanish. Obviously, there are Spanish relievers, potentially Randy won't be back, but they will have Spanish speakers, but he can speak to everyone, but they do need Spanish speakers on the staff. I thought JP did a whale of a job. I even threw his name out as a possible guy they might want to interview as manager because I think he could be a major league manager. He is that smart.
Well, when I was with Tony the day he was hired, he was really stressed out. Obviously, a long day, right? You have the press conference, and you had a lot of things going on. Probably didn't get a lot of sleep. He was really stressing out about picking the staff. He's like, I got to pick my staff. Like, that's going to be and he was like, this is going to be tough because he cares. Here's how the staff hirings usually go, Susan. Tony will have his pick first of all. Buster will recommend, but the players have so much power now. Like players want coaches that say, what can you do for me? How can you make me better? Before it was like, what can I do for Art Howe? What can I do for Dusty Baker? What can I do for Felipe Alou? But the game has kind of changed to where it's like what the coaches can do for the players. Like, how can you make me better? How can you increase my value in the industry? Like, what can you do for me? So in saying that, it's harder than ever to coach right now. But players kind of like a Robbie Ray, a Justin Verlander, a Logan Webb will either get you hired or get you fired. They'll go to if there's a great rapport with their pitching coach and he's helping me get better, Buster, we got to keep this guy. And then that's how you stay. And if the players go to Buster or whoever, the upper echelon guys, stuff I never ever did, but like they can go to him and say, look, this guy did this, this, and this. Let's try something new. So players have so much more power than they used to. And I think, I'm sure Buster talked to them about hiring Tony. And you saw Logan's text messages and what Logan's been saying about it in the newspaper. Like, he's super excited. This team needed energy. There was times this year when they looked like they weren't ready to play baseball. We sat there and talked about it. I did a number of games where I saw it. So now you get energy in your coaching staff. You get experience in your coaching staff. You try to get guys to buy into this is how we're going to play. And I can't tell you how many shows I did on KMBR about Pat Murphy and the Milwaukee Brewers and that college style of brand that translates now in the big leagues. So hopefully we see all of that stuff. But the staff hiring, the pitching coach, the bench coach, to me is going to be maybe even more important now that Tony Vitello's the San Francisco Giants manager.
Do you see Mark Hallberg back? I mean, right now we know that the bench coach job is open because Ryan Christensen has said he's out. Matt Williams told me he's out. So third base. I thought Mark did a really nice job at third base when he was the third base coach. I know fans usually just remember the mistakes. I don't, he had a few stretches that weren't probably perfect, but I thought he did a nice job there. And he's one of those good, calm, level-headed presences around the clubhouse. And obviously he also has, he's Buster's former college teammate and they're very good friends. So he knows the mind of the front office as well as anybody, which I think is probably valuable.
No, I love talking baseball with him. He makes me think. Right? We talked this year, and he said our biggest need is the 7, 8, and 9 hitters, and we're gonna have plenty of shows to talk about that stuff. But 7, 8, 9 in the lineup, we can't have automatic outs. And he was saying things that they, move the ball around, bunt guys over, take a walk. Mark and I talk baseball all the time. I'm a huge fan, so I hope he's around. But I had a couple of friends that were coaches for the Angels, a couple of friends that were coaches for the Mets. And when there's a regime change, what the front office will always say is like, "Hey, it's not up to me; it's up to the new manager." So I think whether Mark Hallberg and JP Martinez and Pat Burrell come back is essentially up to Tony Vitello. If he talks to him, has great conversations, if there's something weird about him that doesn't jibe with like his philosophy. So it's up to the new regime, the new manager to pick his coaches, and not so much the front office. I think maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's gonna need some Spanish speakers, and he knows that. So, I'd put, I really like that coaching staff in general. I know, but the fans weren't necessarily on board with it at all times. But I think, again, we see the work behind the scenes, and we know them as people, and the effort was tremendous, and the intensity and the focus, all of those things that you want. So, FP, I know you very much want to talk about, and I had to, in fact, talk you out of opening with the World Series. Like, this is a Giants podcast. Hate to say it, we're not going to be talking about the World Series on a Giants podcast right away. Sadly, maybe next year on our first one after this season, we'll be talking about a Giants World Series.
The Giants fans are pissed, obviously, because the Dodgers won another World Series. So yeah, you're right. I will defer to you on the topics in the order they come in on. But just from a baseball fan standpoint, one of the greatest World Series I've ever seen. And I was rooting hard for the Jays. I did a thing at the ballpark the other day where I ended the speech with "Go Jays," and all the Giants people there and the employees went nuts. So we were all rooting for the Blue Jays, and obviously spending so much time in Canada, my career as I did, definitely rooting for the Jays in that. But there were just so many little things, and I mean, it had everything. It had an 18 inning game that was 6 hours and whatever. It had an extra inning game 7 with a bench clear, and all the little things in baseball that are I'm passionate about, that are the separators between a championship and not. It was mostly base running. And
Yeah.
that's my number one passion in life. That's my number one thing that I see every day. I think it wins you 10 games a year, and just a primary and a secondary lead at third base for Kiner Falefa might have been the difference in the Blue Jays winning the World Series. So it was very entertaining. I think it was good for baseball in the sense that it helped a lot of people that might have been casual fans fall in love with the game based on all the drama that if you wrote that script, you wouldn't believe in a Hollywood movie. But also, I think it turned a lot of people off that the team that spent the most money won it all again. And I don't know how it affects the Giants and how they spend in the off season, or if you can spend like that. I don't know if it was good for baseball or bad for baseball, but I do, in the end of the day, think it was one of the most entertaining World Series ever.
You know what? I think anytime you showcase the greatest player probably in the history of the game in your biggest event, I think it's great for baseball. Look, I have so many friends who are Dodgers fans. I'm from Northern California, but I admit it. I've got Dodger fan friends. I know some of the Dodgers players very well and like them a lot. But I'm tired of the Dodgers. I think we're all a little tired of the Dodgers, but I am not tired of watching Shohei. I will never be tired of watching Shohei. I was, we're not supposed to root as writers, as a matter of, I work for the Chronicle, not for the Giants. So I don't root. But man, when he was a free agent, I was like, come on, Shohei, come to San Francisco. Like, you'll love Japantown. You'll have so many fans. And that day he showed up at the ballpark, we had a photographer who kind of got some photos of some behind the scenes stuff going on, and then we got it nailed down that he was there. Oh, I was
Like
so
like
excited.
Sasquatch in the meadow. You guys were
Yeah,
like in the
exactly.
bushes outside the
In the
ballpark.
bushes, yeah. Yeah. My friend Marissa and Jemmy literally was in the bushes trying to spot.
That's
Yeah,
creepy.
it's, yeah.
Yamamoto, went
Oh,
up in my book. He's a dog. Like, all of a sudden, like he's hard to hate. That's the guy I wish the Giants would have got, because I
I
didn't know he
mean,
was that much of a gamer. Are you kidding me? With all
yeah.
that, that was insane.
Well, we're
Um,
gonna get to how can the Giants compete with LA, and I do have thoughts on that. But this World Series, so I'm here in London, so I did not watch any of the games live. I watched a lot of the highlights. I read a lot of the recaps and some of the other stories and features, and I mean, I was wowed. But What really jumped out to you besides the base running? And some of the individual, obviously, performances were outstanding. But if you had to sum it up, how would you describe that World Series? Because I always think of, the 75 World Series. Some of that first Red Sox, well, it wasn't that great a series, but, when the Red Sox finally broke through and some of those in the 90s were phenomenal. The Blue Jays, obviously played in one of the great World Series before this.
There's a lot of takeaways from it. I learned that Ernie Clement is my new favorite player. I mean, that guy just absolutely flat out rakes and plays the game the right way. So a man crush on him too. He can really get after it. But just the fact that everybody counted the Blue Jays out, and it was a scrappy team that put the ball in play against a team that's got a $2 billion payroll or whatever it is. And I love the way they bounce back from really tough defeats, bounce back from adversity, and they just kept picking themselves up off the mat. And you could say the same thing about the Dodgers too. There's a lot of grit in that clubhouse that goes way beyond the payroll. Maybe that's a credit to Dave Roberts and Bob Guerin and their whole coaching staff too. But when you're trying to knock out the champ and you get a chance to knock out the champ, you got to land the blow. And as soon as they didn't pick up the runners and with runner on third, less than two, and Dalton Varsho hit the ground ball and the secondary lead. And it's easy to say, well, just hit a sac fly, but it's game 7 and you're in the batter's box. And I was talking to my dad. I'm like, I go, I would just tell myself, hit the ball hard. Because if I think about the outcome of the game, or I think about if I get a hit, I'm a World Series hero and we win the World Series, or maybe in the opposite order of those two, then you get away from the game plan and the process. But to be able to control your pulse with the bases loaded in a at-bat with less than 2 outs that could win the World Series for your teammates, first and foremost, for your city, and to be like a hero. I don't know how you do that, man. And it takes a special kind of athlete to just take a deep breath and just get into the process. I'm looking for a good pitch out over the plate. I'm thinking the other way. I need to get something in the air. Just barrel this ball up any way you can. Because if you think about you're a closer, if I throw strike 3 right here, everyone's piling on me on the mound. You're not going to throw strike 3. If you think about a hitter, if I'm going to walk them off, you're not going to walk them off. It has to be so right here and process oriented, which is so easy for us to say on a podcast and so hard to do in game 7 of the World Series.
Well, and it's funny, you mentioned the importance of base running and obviously the secondary lead in that instance. I mean, there's almost nobody in the modern era who knows the value of base running in a big postseason game better than Dave Roberts. I mean, he is revered for that. So, that's one of the things that drove me nuts about the Giants. Base running, outfield defense. These are all topics we're going to get to over the course of the outfield of the offseason. But oh my gosh, those things made me want to. Every baseball player should be a good base runner and should field their position. Come on.
And it's my passion. I
Yeah.
may or may not have already talked to the new manager about that. So
I don't. He cannot take you away from me from this podcast.
Well,
this is much bigger, FP.
So this is going to be the greatest baseball podcast going. We're about to be billionaires, just so you know.
Oh, sure. How do the Giants compete with the Dodgers now? That's our final topic. Do you have thought? I mean, the Giants don't, although they have plenty of resources. Don't get me wrong. They have loads and loads of resources. They can spend, they could go over the threshold. They could go over the threshold every year. I'm sure Gray Johnson's like, shh, don't. But we all know that they've got, now they've got the whole Bay Area to themselves. Come on. They're on a gold mine. They own their own ballpark, gold mine. But they don't have the media deal the Dodgers have. They don't have the Shohei income, that extraordinary Shohei income. He's already basically paid for him. You could have offered him $1 billion and it would have been a deal easily. And Toronto has they're the only team in Canada. They got resources too, maybe more than the Giants. I don't know. But for me, the separator is the Giants could be going and getting the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th kind of players on the roster that the Dodgers did. These are affordable guys. They are not getting those guys. How are the Dodgers getting the best role players too? I mean, everybody seems to click once they're there. I mean, they have all of this locked up. And then you go down to AAA, they've got the most depth. That's crazy.
I mean, that's $1 million question. How can the Giants compete with the Dodgers? And I think what you have to do is worry about yourself and not the Dodgers. First and foremost, you have to do what you need to do to be successful. And what type of brand of baseball that is going to be. We play the game the right way every single day with a passion and a focus and an energy that it's all we have to do is go out there for 2.5 hours every night and compete our ass off and do all the little things that sometimes we didn't see. A lot of times we didn't see last year. And whether it is getting, I don't think it's Greg Johnson spending. That's what all the fans want to do is like, oh, you got to spend with the Dodgers. Number one, you got to rely on a back-to-back hangover. That how hard is it to three-peat? Like you have to hope that there's some element of that. And number two, you have to hope that Tony Vitello comes in and inspires this team, and that is very transparent with the players, that realizes like that he can help them be winning players, that he can help the guys that haven't had the big contracts get the contracts through a style of baseball that wins and is productive for all of us. So for the Giants to compete with the Dodgers, they have to worry about themselves. The Padres are great too. The Diamondbacks are great too. It's a really tough division, but it's about, to me, a brand of baseball that's scrappy, fundamentally sound, that throws strikes, that catches the baseball, that hits the cutoff man, that keeps the double play in order, that 90 feet is precious, and they're running the bases in a winning manner to win, and they're looking for every advantage they can get, turning over every stone, lifting up every mat, and putting the ball in play with two strikes and not striking out and running hard to first base and putting pressure on the defense. I mean, I could go on for hours and hours. If they play a Milwaukee Brewers brand of baseball, they will be in the mix and they will be playing in October. But it's not just, oh, we did it for 2 weeks and then all of a sudden we don't know what the infield fly rule is and we're letting fly balls drop between outfielders in the outfield. It has to be an aggressive, hair on fire, fundamentally sound on both sides of the baseball brand of baseball for not just a month and then take a month off and another month and take a month off. There has to be a consistency to it. And there's 162, Susan, as you know. You can't go out like college baseball and just like woohoo. You can't do that every night, but you could be consistent in your approach, and you could be diligent about your work ethic, and you could be passionate about your desire to win, and that's how you catch the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah. And I think that the rah-rah thing is not necessarily going to work all the time. And, so it potentially could backfire at times. But I will say, I think we're going to have our first argument right now. I agree with you, everything you said. But last year they said pitching and defense. And I said, yeah, that is how you got to win. But they did not have the personnel to do it. You have to have the personnel first and foremost. And you take a look at the Giants outfield, which we're going to talk a lot about this offseason. The Giants outfield is not, it's one of the reasons we saw Drew Gilbert much earlier than I think we thought we might see him. The Giants outfield is not a good defensive outfield, especially once they traded. Yes, just not. They don't have the personnel to be, among the better outfields, which is what they need, especially at that ballpark. I love Elliot Ramos. I love him as a hitter. I love him as a person. He's phenomenal. I'm not sure he is an adequate major league left fielder. I think he has to take a huge step forward next year at that position. And he needs to be confident and he needs to be focused. And he has not shown that yet. If not, I think he should be a DH, and they've got Bryce Eldridge to do that. I don't know what you do in that spot. And Jung-Hoo Lee, love watching Jung-Hoo, but he is not one of the better center fielders in the game right now. He needs to take a step forward. Now, he was playing in his first full season. I'm going to give him a big asterisk for that, but we need to see a lot more from him. And I'm going to talk about this all off season. I'm so sorry. I'm going to bore you on it. But I think, it's more than just saying we have to play the game the right way. And they do. They have to have the players that can do that.
Well, that's where the work comes in, and you have to buy in. I mean, the only way you get better as an outfielder is taking fly balls off the bat live, not fungos, not machines. You just got to power shag, and you have to do it. And if you've reached your ceiling defensively, I always think that on that side of the baseball, there's so much upside if you want to work at it. there's only so far you can go as a hitter based on what God gave you and your work ethic. But on defense, like Wade Boggs was a terrible third baseman in the minor leagues, and he won a Gold Glove, and there's all kinds of examples of that. So it's just about caring about defense and working hard at it, and wanting to be better at it. And I think when you talk about spending, you're never going to spend with the Dodgers if you're Greg Johnson, but just make some smart choices. Get some scrappy guys, some guys that can play defense, like back to 7, 8, and 9. They're not automatic outs. They can bunt guys over and hit and run and take a walk. They don't have to be 300 hitters. They just have to be tough outs. I think if you build the lineup with tough outs, but all your points are well taken, Susan. I mean,
I need to be convinced. I need to be convinced that some guys have not hit their ceilings defensively, because we have not seen that to be the case yet.
Well, it's
so. Otherwise, go out and get a couple of good defensive players.
If you think your guys aren't good defensively, then coach them up, man. It's that simple. It's like you can't complain about guys being bad at something. And if you're the coach, that's why Tony's the manager of the Giants right now, because I feel like he's going to hire staff that there's going to be a tireless work ethic. I think his biggest challenge, besides the obvious, is going to be to realize when to like back off a little bit, because there are 162 games, and we can't just run these guys into the ground with early work every day.
You're the optimist. I guess I'm going to be the skeptic sometimes on this show, but
no, I like that.
We almost always agree on everything.
Yeah, exactly.
That wouldn't be fun if we agreed on everything, but we usually do.
So there was some breaking news before we just started to record the greatest podcast in history, Splash Hit. It's something about Hall of Fame. Like, you're on the contemporary era committee. There's something about the Hall. We can tease this for our next show. We're going to do a couple of shows a week. Yeah. Let's
talk about it next time. Yeah, I'm on the contemporary era ballot committee. I'm on all the eras ballot committee. We form, obviously, it's what it sounds like. We formulate the ballots for the era committees to vote on. And I can say, if you haven't seen already, since I think it came out about an hour ago, Barry Bonds is back on the ballot. Jeff Kent is on the ballot. So will be considered along with a bunch of other names by the eras committee during the winter meetings this year. And that will be decided. I find those are always going to be interesting. So stay tuned next time, because we will talk about that in full.
Can they fight in the dugout in Cooperstown if they both make it? That'd be awesome. Just a full-on brawl at the induction ceremony like they did in San Diego. They didn't like each other, by the way. Just
can
an
they
FYI.
Put a Chuck on
Captain Obvious over here.
If Kent makes it, can they put like a Chuck onto his plaque?
They were like little kids. If Barry had to have one whole row on the plane, Jeff had to have 2 rows. If Barry was 10 minutes late for stretching, Jeff had to be 11 minutes late for stretching. They were like little kids. But both great teammates. I enjoyed them both very much. And Barry and I are still close. I haven't talked to Jeff in years. But I'll just say this. I'll end the show with this. The Hall of Fame isn't the Hall of Fame until Barry Bonds gets in. Period. It just isn't. So whatever you need to do, Susan, on your
I have lots of thoughts.
Your little committees, make sure Barry gets into the Hall of Fame.
Well, I was on that committee, and he is on that ballot. I was on the last eras committee that did not vote him in. We can talk about that too. I can't talk too much in depth about that because we're not allowed to, but we'll talk around it.
All right. Well, that was fun. Our first ever podcast, Splash Hit, on the Foul Territory Network. We've had a blast today. I don't know. We're going to do these periodically. You're going to be my guest periodically, and we're going to talk about the Giants every single time. So it was fun, actually, just to get to see you. You're in jolly old England across the pond. It was fun talking baseball with you, and that was really cool. Thanks.
Fantastic. And where can people find us now? And where do we appear with this beautiful video?
I have it right here. You can subscribe to Splash Hit Territory on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Foul Territory Network. So, yeah.
I'm going to do that right now.
I'm going to do it right now. All right, Susan. Until next time. That was great.
Thank you, FP. Here we go with the outro.